Hi there, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp with some metallic watercolored background graduation cards using some new products from the Simon Says Stamp Fluttering by release. About this time every year, I like to create multiples of graduation cards to have on hand so that when it comes to graduation time, I already have them ready to go. I am going to start today by taking this awesome new background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. This is the center cut star, and I'm going to remove the foam insert from the MISTI so that I can use this cling stamp and stamp it multiple times on some pre-trimmed down cardstock from Fawn. I'm just going to put a little adhesive here on the paper in my MISTI so that the paper doesn't shift when I'm trying to stamp it. I've kind of worked out about where the center is of this design. So that's where I'm going to place this piece of paper every time, using that grid of the background paper to help me out. Now I'm still going to need to trim this down just a little bit. Not only is it slightly off center, I want these backgrounds, when adhered to my card base, to have a thin white border all the way around the edge, but I like to keep it big for stamping most of the time. That way it gives me a little wiggle room, especially if I don't get it stamped exactly center like I was saying. I'm going to use a powder bag tool to apply some powder to my background so that I can stamp this center cut star with some embossing ink. This is the Simon Says Stamp embossing ink. And then emboss this with Simon Says Stamp gold embossing powder. Now the awesome thing about some of these background stamps from Simon Says Stamp is there is a removable piece. So that star from the center actually is removable, and I'll show you that because I have a couple of different card options that I'm sharing today. There's about 3 different styles. The backgrounds I'm creating are created in our high school's colors. You could definitely do this exact same technique in whatever the school colors are for the graduation card that you need. Once I've sprinkled on the gold embossing powder, I am going to heat set this, and this is the whole background. For an even simpler design, you could simply stamp the background on the colored cardstock with VersaMark ink or the embossing ink, and add maybe a white embossing powder would show up a little bit better. I like the gold when I'm watercoloring with metallics, but you could definitely forego the watercoloring, and this card would go together a lot quicker. So if you're needing to knock some graduation cards out really fast, I think that would be a really clean and simple and fun look as well. Now I am trimming 1/4 of an inch off the bottom and one side, and this is really going to center the design pretty well. I am taking these awesome starry colors, and I am going to watercolor with a water brush pen. I've loaded my water brush pen with water, and I'm going to start watercoloring. Now, oftentimes I will use lots of these different gold colors from this collection, but today we're only going to use 2, and I'm going to do all of the white gold first. Part of the reason I chose gold embossing powder is because I'm watercoloring with these shades of gold starry colors, and I'm working from the inside out. I find that it's a lot easier to know where I am, especially when I'm trying to create a pattern of watercolor, if I work from the center and work my way out instead of kind of starting all over the place. For example, all of these little sections here going around the star, we're just going to do the white, and I'm going to simply turn the paper and watercolor all of those in. I have sped this up, but I did keep in the watercoloring just to kind of share this with you. You could also stamp this particular image or any of the images on white or watercolor cardstock. You could color, I still like the embossing. The embossing does kind of help hold the water and the ink inside the embossed area. You could emboss it with whatever color of embossing powder you want and color in the images with some regular watercolor colors instead of doing the metallics if you wanted to. Lots and lots of great ways to use this. This background definitely does not have to just be for a graduation style card. It works for anything. I was looking for something to do a more elegant, I guess, style of graduation card, something that really works for a girl or a boy. Any of these cards would go either way, I think. Definitely not one way or the other. And I wanted something that wasn't real cutesy. I have some other examples that I will link to at the end of this video with some graduation cards that I've done in the past. Which I love all different styles, but definitely I was trying to go for something a little bit more classy, a little bit more elegant this year. Here is another example of just working my way around with these little scallops, just sticking to one area, coloring that all in before moving on to another area. Now the star part is up at the top, and the bottom two corners have a little bit different design. So we're going to color this in as well. Such a pretty background, and I think it really makes the background pop and shine and the star of the show with this little bit of metallic coloring. You could totally leave it here if you wanted to with just the white and the red. I think that's super pretty. I did go in with some of the champagne gold. The white gold and the champagne gold, or yes, the white gold and the champagne gold are probably my two most used and favorite colors. I really love these two. I think they're two of the lighter colors as well. So they really show up awesome on dark cardstock. I have done this technique with other cards before, and I always love it. It looks amazing on black, on dark gray, navy, which again, I'm doing navy here today as well. But the red was something I've not used before, and I was really excited to see how this turned out. Now, I did two of these cards exactly the same, only one on red and one on navy. The cardstock I'm using is Lawn Fawn cardstock in Chili Pepper and Blue Jay. And I will only share the watercoloring of this, excuse me, on the red design because the blue is exactly the same. And in fact, the other two card examples that I'm going to be sharing with you are very, very similar. The difference is that, and I did miss a little section here on this red background, which you can see, which does happen sometimes. I did have to go in later and do that. Even after I photographed the cards, I noticed I missed it. I wanted to point that out really quick. The only difference on the other two is I'm going to remove that star insert, and you can use the star with or without this background stamp. So here I'm removing the star. You could use that and create an all over star background. I think that would be really fun as well. Just like before, I've not removed my stamp from the Misty. I still have my little piece of adhesive on my background, and I'm going to stamp this up again with this clear embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. Emboss both the red and the blue backgrounds with the gold embossing powder. But it's going to leave this great big star in the center. And I really like this. It gives you a great grounding place for the sentiments or anything you want to add to the card. I think the other background being busy, you need to add something a little bit more substantial to stand out. And I'm going to show you that in a minute because the Bravo greeting that I'm going to use in the center of these stars shows up so much better with a less busy star background than it does against the full watercolored panel that I just shared with you. And I'll show you that here when we get to putting together the card design. So just like before, I am going to emboss this gold embossing powder, and you're going to see that nice open star area. It looks so awesome. I really love that with one background stamp, you have the versatility of using it with that star or without. Really, you get three different designs. You get the full background, you get the background with the star cut out, and you can use the star on its own, which I didn't use here, but would be very easy to do. I'm going to share again the watercoloring process. You can see what it looks like on the dark blue background here. Again, so pretty. Just going to spin this around. I almost think that the open star is my favorite, but I love how all four turned out. Lots of different options. There's lots of new graduation themed stamps, and some of them are very definitely graduation themed. We're going to be using the CZ Design Grad stamps and coordinating dies, which definitely are graduation themed. But in addition to that, I'm going to be using the Bravo wafer cut die, which will work for any type of congratulation card. And then some messages for every day, which is a new messages greeting stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, which the sentiments in this, first of all, you get a ton, and they work for all different occasions. But things like congratulations, I'm proud of you, way to go, yay, you did it. These all work fantastic for graduation style cards. Again, just working my way around. I did all of the white first. I will go back in with the champagne gold and pull that in as well. But it really makes that background come to life. I think you can see the design, the detail of the stamp so much more by adding these metallic watercolors to the design. I'm going to take some white top fold card bases now and adhere these. The backgrounds we just watercolored, they're completely dry, to the white top fold card bases with some nice strong adhesive. I'm using the Glue Glider Permatack adhesive to glue those down, and I was pretty generous with the adhesive. Watercoloring, adding any water to the cardstock tends to make it curl up. See how the Bravo really gets lost on that design? This is where using the design with the open star works better. Bravo was die cut from some gold foil cardstock scraps that I had that have already been adhered to Fun Foam with Stick It adhesive. I like to save all of my scraps because the Bravo is pretty small and really worked great to die cut this from my scraps. So when I adhere this to the center of the star here on the other style of background, it really pops. And the gold foil brings out the gold embossing and the metallic watercolors so beautifully. In addition to the die cut word, we're going to use some phrases. Originally, I thought I'd try to use 2 phrases from the messages for everyday stamp set. And I'm going to go ahead and use coordinating ink colors to match the cardstock I use. So this is the Blue Jay ink from Lawn Fawn. And I stamped, "I'm so proud of you and congratulations." We'll trim this into a thin strip using a paper trimmer and then trim it apart. But when I grab both of these greetings and try to use them, I felt like they overpowered the star. It was just too much. So I'm just going to split these up. I can use the blue congratulations on something else. I probably will need some additional cards. So I just saved it to put together a couple more of these. You can see those two, it was just too much. I think it just takes up too much of that nice kind of white space back behind the sentiment. I popped up the sentiment strip with these foam adhesive strips. I love these foam adhesive strips. And we'll go ahead and set that one aside just for a second, and we're going to ink up a graduation cap from the Grad stamp set. Something all 4 card designs have in common, in addition to the background being the same one, just some with the star and some with not, is they all have a graduation cap. These are all from Grad, stamped in Lawn Fawn Blue Jay or Chili Pepper ink. Pardon me, I used the LOBSTER ink, not Chili Pepper. The Chili Pepper is the cardstock color. I used LOBSTER for stamping the red sentiments and hats. And then I'm going to die cut the graduation caps using the coordinating Grad die. And then we're going to do something really fun with these, something I've discovered recently, and I've done quite a lot in different ways on cards I've used. But the Nouveau Crystal Drops in White Blizzard is an iridescent, sparkly Nouveau Crystal Drop. And I think I love adding sparkle to elements, and I've always used things like the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen or things like that before, but it's a little more subtle. If you really want a glittery, sparkly, very prominent glittery element, I like to apply the White Blizzard over something, and we're going to cover the graduation cap with that. In addition to the White Blizzard, I'm also using Simply White, which if you've watched my videos before, you know I've mentioned is my favorite Nouveau Crystal Drop. It is an opaque white that is bright white, and it adds such a fun element. I'm just adding these, creating some little elements around the center area of each card. They're all going to be slightly different, but all going to feature some Nouveau Crystal Drops in these colors in some way. Just whatever works best with the design. The graduation cap was popped up because the Bravo greeting is popped up on foam. I really felt like the graduation cap needed to be as well. It's going to flow a lot better. This is the White Blizzard Nouveau Crystal Drops that I'm going to apply over the cap. And I'm just going to take it and kind of spread it out, a nice thin layer. And when you apply it, you can see it really changes the color of the cap. It looks kind of whitish. As the Nouveau drops dry, it's going to lose that white tint, and it's just going to be sparkly. It is so super pretty. I can't wait to show you at the end of the video how they look once that is all dry. So both Bravo cards, very same design, just a different color combination. My other two cards, I'm going to just kind of mix and match greetings from the Rad Grad and Messages for Everyday stamp sets. I'm using some Post-it tape to mask off parts of the greeting so that I can get a two-tone stamped greeting. This big bold greeting works great over a very busy background. I'm using black ink and lobster red ink. And we're just going to keep masking and stamping until the sentiment is completely stamped. I do recommend some of the ink will bleed through the Post-it tape if stamped too many times. So you can't really reuse it too many times because you don't want that ink to bleed through. I usually just switch it every time just to be on the safe side. The lobster red gave me the most trouble. I felt like it needed to be stamped a couple times to really be bold and stand out. Just like the graduation caps that we just added the Nouveau Crystal Drops in White Blizzard to, I'm going to do the same thing to the word rad in this greeting so that it's glittery and the graduation cap is glittery. So clean this again, mask it off, and finish stamping the word grad. I think this is a really cool and fun sentiment. This whole Rad Grad stamp set is perfect for all kinds of graduation cards. We've die cut that. We're going to adhere it with foam adhesive. I like the foam adhesive on busy backgrounds. It helps give a little bit of dimension and makes the sentiment really pop. The sentiment or embellishment, whatever it might be. In this case, we've got both. Really pop off the background. So we're going to be using You Are Seriously One Rad Grad and the graduation cap from Rad Grad. And then the Yay You Did It sentiment is from Messages for Everyday. So totally mixing and matching from different stamp sets for this particular design. Just going to trim down the greeting. Again, the greeting is going to be adhered with those foam adhesive strips. These are super thin adhesive strips. I absolutely love them for adhering thin little strips. I love using sentiment strips on my cards, and these thin little strips are fantastic for adhering those in particular for lots of things, but really the little sentiment strips for me in particular. I used foam adhesive squares from Scrapbook Adhesives for everything else. We're just going to center that in the star, pop that in place, add our little phrase underneath, and then add the graduation cap. Now I really fiddled with the graduation cap because I didn't want it to be covering up any of the greeting. So I ended up not centering it because when I centered it, it really cut into the R in the word R. And I ended up shifting it over to the left so that the tassel hangs down in between the two words, and that works the best, I think. Or you could put it over clear on the right, whatever. But I really fiddled with it a lot, trying to find the best placement. Here are those Nouveau crystal drops in White Blizzard again. A good example of how it looks when it goes on wet, and then once it's dry, it's just this beautiful, beautiful glittery finish. And go over the words rad. Because this is such a bold word, this worked really well. I think with something a little bit more fine, it might be a little trickier, but I haven't tried it yet, so it might work just fine as well, but I really liked the bold word and it's glittery. I'm going to go pretty simple with my white Nouveau crystal drops on this card. Just put them kind of at the tips of this outer star shape. And then we'll go ahead and set this aside to completely dry. I do recommend letting these dry for a good 24 hours before handling them, just to be on the safe side. Generally, the glitter dries really, really quick. Here is a look at all 4 finished cards. The congrats and see what I did there greeting and the cap are all from Grad. Lots more Nouveau crystal drops on that design. Here are the 2 Bravo cards, the same exact design, just one in red and one in blue. And finally, we have the You Are Seriously One Rad Grad card. Thanks for joining me today for these 4 graduation cards featuring Simon Says stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.